And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:09 in the West. Talk Radio 790, KABC, The John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wang to the sports desk in Culver City.
John, yesterday, President Joe Biden outlined his administration's efforts to continue working to cancel as much student debt as they legally possibly can. And you know, whenever President Joe Biden has a new program to announce, he's got a new website. So let's all get the address.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save. Studentaid.gov/save.
Why do they keep giving him those websites to read?
Visit vaccines.gov. Vaccines.gov.
At this point, you know your boss can't read a website. So why do you consistently do that to him?
There's got to be a staffer that thinks it's funny.
Okay. Doug McIntyre could not pronounce a name unless it appeared in a 1928 Yale yearbook. And if you gave him a name that looked like an eye chart, there's no way he could pronounce it on the air. So, if you're producing for Doug McIntyre, you know that if there's a complicated name, it has to be written phonetically. Otherwise, it's going to be crash and burn.
Well, and to that point, Doug McIntyre's longtime producer, Nathan Baker, would purposely book guests with difficult-to-pronounce names so Doug would screw it up on the air.
Oh, yes. I remember one time, I don't even know if I should say this.
Oh, yes, you should.
There was an author, I believe, who was booked by the name of Kuntz, Kuntz.
Marty, regretting telling you to tell this story.
Never, ever, ever book anyone by that name for Doug McIntyre, ever.
By the way, this drop that I've had on the hot board for 7 years.
Good enough.
That is a guest who's responding to McIntyre screwing up his name.
How many times?
Good enough.
I don't even remember who the guest is, but good enough will live on forever.
Let's listen to Joe try to pronounce or recite that website one more time.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save. Studentaid.gov/save.
Do you think Joe Biden's the kind of guy that goes to Google and types in Google?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And closes it out every time. I just wonder if he calls it a computer or the box with the buttons. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, one of the things that we see over and over and over again here in the state of California is that when crime spikes or there's some horrific crime that's generating a lot of attention, and Gavin Newsom gets asked about it, Gavin Newsom claims that he's doing everything he can, everything in his power as governor of California to make sure that criminals are punished. And if criminals aren't punished, blame someone else other than him.
He spent plenty of money on this problem.
That's right. Blame the judges specifically, who he appoints, by the way, but the judges are the villains in his eyes, and they're the people that you should look to blame when things don't work out regarding criminals being punished. Yet time and time and time again, we see these smash and grabs where people do horrific things, they're caught, and it's a catch and release. And they act like those are situations where it just slipped in the cracks. But it's not a situation that slipped through the cracks. This is what happens in California on a daily basis, including, Randy, in San Francisco with fentanyl dealers.
That's right. A milestone was reached last week. District Attorney Brooke Jenkins, who has been working her ass off to go after drug dealers in San Francisco, was for the first time able to convict one. One.
Wait. One?
One.
As in the loneliest number?
One drug dealer has been convicted. They get arrested and they get out. They get arrested, they get out. They even go to trial and the jury lets them off. This is the first time a jury has convicted a drug dealer of fentanyl dealing. It finally happened. The first time.
Wait, this is a city where people are doing drugs in open air settings on a daily basis.
Yes.
People are dying of overdoses of fentanyl on a daily basis in the streets.
That's correct.
And only one person has been convicted of dealing fentanyl.
The first one was last week. They have been making effort after effort after effort since she got sworn in a year and a half ago, and they've only been able to fully convict one who is awaiting sentencing tomorrow.
I would love to know what other crimes have received convictions. Anybody in San Francisco been convicted of clipping the tags off their mattresses? We have time for that, but we don't have time for the fentanyl dealers.
Well, there are a whole lot of different reasons why we've only convicted one drug dealer for fentanyl dealing, and there are a whole bunch of different people to blame, including the jury pools.
See, this is part of the problem. The Constitution says that you have a constitutional right to be judged by a jury of your peers. But you open up your front door and you look around you, you say to yourself, I don't see a peer anywhere in sight. All I see is a bunch of losers.
KGO in San Francisco did an incredible investigative piece into just how hard it is to convict a drug dealer, not just any drug dealer, a fentanyl dealer. And it is eye-opening how much incompetence and how much blame should be put at everybody for this.
Well, we like to blame the Soros DAs. We like to blame the state legislature. We like to blame the governor. But ultimately, it's the dummies who vote who put them in office. They weren't dropped from a spaceship from outer space.
It's almost like the voter could be replaced with the cashier.
If the cashier is dummy,
you get the government you deserve, people.
Let's hear from KGO why it is so difficult to convict fentanyl dealers.
San Francisco's fentanyl epidemic continues to devastate the city.
Yeah, we want to focus on why law enforcement says it's so difficult to convict drug dealers and who's ultimately responsible for allowing them to go back on the streets.
ABC 7 News reporter Leanne Melendez joins us now. And Leanne, you looked into this. What'd you find?
Well, I found that usually people like to point the finger or blame just one person for a drug crisis here. But as we all know, when it comes to drug dealers and enforcing the law in San Francisco, to quote a colleague of mine, we're all in this together, meaning it's not just City Hall. It's also San Francisco's legal system. It's Sacramento and lawmakers who are not willing to properly address the fentanyl crisis. And finally, back to San Francisco, it's the jury pool.
It's everybody.
Can you imagine being a DA in San Francisco and you've got to try to convict someone of dealing fentanyl? And you look at that jury, and it looks like a convention for Antifa. How are you supposed to win a conviction?
Well, that's why they haven't until last week.
It takes more than just police and its supporting cast to make a dent in San Francisco's drug trade. The role played by judges inside the Superior Court is now coming under scrutiny by City Hall and the district attorney.
Even though we've been advocating for repeat offenders to stay in, they're still being released. Violent and...
Hey, it sounds like what's going on down here.
Yeah, deja vu all over again.
Violent and repeat offenders.
DA Brooke Jenkins took office nearly 15 months ago, and only last week was her office for the first time able to convict a drug dealer who claimed that he was a victim of human trafficking and forced to sell drugs.
So the fentanyl dealer is claiming to be the real victim in this?
Oh, no, that's the line that they've been given because it gives you a whole bunch of different special protections if you claim you're a victim of human trafficking. It actually makes it incredibly difficult for a prosecutor to go after you if you claim when you're arrested for being a drug dealer that you're the victim of human trafficking. Just saying that magic phrase gets you off.
And then that's when the violins start playing for the jury, and the jury buys your BS.
Oh, yes, that is happening.
For fear of his safety as well as others. And the jury was not persuaded by his story and did find him guilty.
So if this is the first time that a case went to trial And the jury did not buy that line of BS. And they said, no, you're a drug dealer. You're going to prison.
If I was the judge, and this is the first person to ever be convicted of dealing fentanyl in San Francisco, and they claimed in my courtroom falsely that they were human trafficked into this country and had no choice other than to sell fentanyl, I would say, I hereby sentence you to be human trafficked to Canada, where we really are going to handcuff you to a sewing machine.
20-year-old Eduardo Rosales Silva had been arrested in May 2022 for possession to sell cocaine.
It takes this long? This might be the first guy Brooke Jenkins arrested, and he's finally getting convicted a year and a half later.
Well, if it's been that long, maybe Kamala was the one that arrested him.
20-year-old Eduardo Rosales Silva had been arrested in May 2022 for possession to sell cocaine, fentanyl, and meth, but was released.
That's quite the cocktail.
You notice anytime someone has three names, it's never for something good?
No.
It's never because they won the lottery. No, that was Edwin Castro. But you've got serial killers, John Wayne Gacy, son of Sam, and you've got fentanyl dealers. Three names, not two.
I think they do that on purpose because they want to be extra specific. If you just do two names, there's a good chance there's a lot of people with that same name. Three names is a stretch.
You know my rule, Randy, when I call res for any corporation?
What's that?
If the person answering the phone has four or more names, I hang up because they're just going to be a nasty woman.
But was released by a judge. Less than a month later, he was arrested a second time for selling drugs and again was released by the court.
Wait a second. So, by the way, Ghost of Christmas Past, this is what already was going on in San Francisco that we're having go on right now. This guy gets arrested for being a drug dealer, gets out thanks to a judge, gets arrested a month later while his case is still open, gets out again even though he's shown that he's a repeat offender.
Gee, it's hard to see why these drug dealers don't think that we're okay with them dealing drugs.
Was released by the court. He was arrested 2 more times and finally kept in jail after the 4th arrest.
4 arrests for being a fentanyl dealer, and by that time they realize, okay, maybe we shouldn't cite and release this guy.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And, Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Juan writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Hey, guys, I'm trying to apply for student loan forgiveness, but I missed the website. Could you have Joe Biden read it one more time? Why, yes. Yes, we can.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save. studentaid.gov/save.
So that still wasn't very clear. Maybe we could help him out. Maybe we could play it slower for him.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save.
And if that still wasn't clear enough, what if we turn Joe Biden into Ben Shapiro?
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save.
Well, if you really don't want to pay off your loans, all you have to do is call up Sally Mae and tell them that you are human trafficked from Guatemala.
That might work.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save.
Randy, we have a handy-dandy new app.
That's right. Go to the Apple App Store or the Android Store and search for KABC AM or 790 KABC. It'll pop up. If it looks like there's multiple ones, it's because the old one didn't get deleted yet. Look for the one that says version 9.0. Anyway, you'll notice that it's the new one because it's clean. It's very easy to read. It shows you today's top headlines. It's very simple to listen live with all of the clutter that you see on some of the other apps. And it's the easiest way to listen to podcasts of this show on your phone with CarPlay. Check it out. It is fantastic. We highly recommend the brand new KABC app.
Now, here's a request. We heard Joe Biden slowed down. We heard Joe Biden in real time. We heard Joe Biden as Ben Shapiro. Can we have Joe Biden as Ben Shapiro on Hunter Biden's cocaine?
Okay. I think we can do that. So let me go to the software here and see if we can make that situation happen. So we would have to speed up the speeding up. All right. This is Joe Biden doing his best Ben Shapiro impression while snorting Hunter's coke.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save.
Sounded exactly as I expected it to.
You can sign up for the SAVE plan at studentaid.gov/save.
Randy, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Sure. 790 KABC welcomes Mariah Carey, Merry Christmas, one and all, to the Hollywood Bowl on November 17th. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
I think I figured out what we have to do to get San Francisco to finally start convicting people for dealing fentanyl.
What's that?
Tell them there's hydroxychloroquine in it. The Fix California Hour coming up after the news at 1. Right now, we're going through the shocking revelation that the city and county of San Francisco, with all their drug problems, has only successfully convicted one individual for dealing fentanyl.
One guy. And that happened last week. And Brooke Jenkins has been working as hard as she could at this for the last 15 months.
And the man who was convicted still insisted in front of the jury and the judge that he was the real victim.
And this is the first time the jury didn't buy that line, because they usually do. For more, let's go back to KGO.
He will be sentenced on October 6th. According to Jenkins, so far this year, there were 511.
By the way, this better not be an AB 109 thing where he gets sentenced and then he gets out for time served.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
There were 511 individuals with open bench warrants who failed to appear in court after they were released by the judge.
Again, San Francisco did all this stuff before us, yet we're going ahead with zero bail.
And this, by the way, according to people like George Gascon and Gavin Newsom, is quote-unquote accountability.
We wanted to get some context and asked if this kind of leniency is followed in other Bay Area counties.
I mean, if somebody has no record whatsoever and they've got a stable address and the like, most of the time they may not be kept in custody. But if there's a second time, not 3 or 4, a second time, they're going to occupy the San Mateo County Jail.
You notice that we rarely have San Mateo crime stories.
No, you don't. But even what this guy said is way too lenient. It doesn't take much fentanyl to kill you. If you're dealing fentanyl, that's like playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets in the chamber. The question is not if you're going to kill people. The question is how many people are you going to kill? Why don't we treat it like we would any other public threat that would kill large numbers of people?
Well, that's what London Breed's been saying. We locked down the entire city of San Francisco, now to mention the state and the country, for COVID, and fentanyl killed more people than the Rona.
You can be a police officer or a social worker or a Caltrans worker, and you're cleaning something up, and if there are drugs with fentanyl in it, you can overdose just by touching it.
But before San Francisco's DA was able to convict Rosales Silva, 3 similar drug dealing cases resulted in a hung jury.
And this is why no one normal wants to go to jury duty.
It may not come as a surprise that San Francisco jurors tend to be more liberal and sympathetic.
We have nobody to blame but ourselves at this point.
I'll say it again. I know I sound like a broken record. You get the government you deserve.
In a recent newspaper editorial, someone who served on a jury explained why they decided to vote to acquit a drug dealer from Honduras. Quote, I believe the evidence showed that the accused, who I'll call Esteban, to protect his identity, was coerced into selling drugs against his will.
Okay, so not only did the fentanyl dealer get off, we used a fake name to protect him so that his good name wouldn't be damaged in the paper.
I hope that he will now have the opportunity to rebuild his life and separate himself from the coercion and violence that have gotten him here.
No, he's going to go back to dealing fentanyl because he got off.
Okay, if you're on a jury and you acquit someone who's accused of a crime, typically what you say is they didn't do it. They didn't do it, and I'm appalled that they were charged with the charges because you shouldn't take a man's freedom away from him unless they're guilty of what they've been accused of. No, that juror said, oh, yeah, of course he did it, but I just have sympathy for him, so here's a mulligan for you.
It's like the OJ trial.
Pretty much.
What's going on, America?
But he only killed 2 people. How many do you think this guy has killed in San Francisco?
This guy is like 10 OJs. Just him.
A few months ago, I went to the Tenderloin to ask those who weren't using drugs in Spanish if it was true that some drug dealers were being coerced and threatened. They chose not to answer.
No, what happens is you have these left-wing groups that find the silver bullet. They know what the argument is that the jury will buy, and they just say, read this card when you're in court, and they will believe it.
Last May, a survey of 500 potential San Francisco voters conducted by EMC Research found that 70% of them said sanctuary city policies should not be extended to those undocumented people selling drugs. Supervisor Hillary Ronan.
I think that this is a distraction. I don't think that low-level drug dealers from
but it's
Honduras,
fentanyl. It's not
from Honduras are the...
Oh, Hillary Ronan, another San Francisco supervisor that's pro-drug dealer.
That's right. It's racist to convict people for dealing fentanyl.
I think that this is a distraction. I don't think that low-level drug dealers from
but it's
Honduras,
fentanyl. It's not
from Honduras are the real cause of this drug crisis.
Instead, Ronan blamed the makers of OxyContin for the current opioid crisis in San Francisco.
What?
Yes, blaming corporations for drugs that come here originally from China into Mexico through the porous border into the hands of these illegal aliens who are selling it on the street and killing Americans, and the problem is Wall Street.
But shouldn't we do something about it now, though? Shouldn't we do something about it now?
100%. And that combined with poverty is...
Poverty.
The real culprit behind the fentanyl crisis is poverty.
This is like COVID with what the unions did. Oh, you want to be safe during a pandemic? Here's what you got to do. Universal health care, defund the police, give us everything we want in our contract negotiations, and then and only then will you be safe from the virus.
Our learning spaces are special places.
100%. And that combined with poverty is what led to the crisis in the streets today, not immigrants.
Still...
The level of stupidity here is off the charts.
The question was, what do we do about the Honduran drug dealer that was arrested and here in the country illegally? Should they get the same sanctuary city protections that you want for the hardworking berry picker?
Listen to this dingbat and think to yourself for a minute. She's the one in San Francisco who's not on fentanyl.
But shouldn't we do something about it now, though? Shouldn't we do something about it now?
100%. And that combined with poverty is what led to the crisis in the streets today, not immigrants.
And when the vast majority of the Board of Supervisors sounds like that, that's how San Francisco gets the way it does.
And that's what the people who live there believe. I don't know how you improve this. I don't know how you take that woman and beat her with another candidate when she runs for re-election for the Board of Supervisors.
No, her position on this is incredibly popular. A few months ago, Matt Haney, who's one of the logical ones on that board, wanted to put forth a measure that specifically would not give sanctuary protections to drug dealers, and he was called a racist for it.
I know what we do to beat her in the next election. We run Dianne Feinstein's corpse and a Ouija board.
Still, even the former Speaker of the House had to concede that one way out of this crisis was to bring in the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. Nancy Pelosi writing to Attorney General Merrick Garland. People are dying from fentanyl and violence. We hope to hear soon about a designation of Operation Overdrive for San Francisco to combat the cartels.
We've got critics who are hand-wringers and navel-gazers and defenders of the status quo without even having the courage to admit that they're defending the status quo. We need to try new approaches.
So we turned to Sacramento to see if the state is taking harsher action and found that lawmakers there are still taking a lukewarm approach to the fentanyl crisis.
Because they come from cities like San Francisco. It's the same people. Scott Wiener, who is in charge of the Public Safety Committee in the state Senate, prior to being elected to the state legislature, was on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. It is literally the same people making the decisions.
For example, 3 bills introduced in the California legislature did not advance. AB 367 to add sentencing enhancement for those who seriously injure or kill through fentanyl poisoning, rejected.
Why?
Well, because you want to take those fentanyl dealers and make them employee of the month.
AB 955 to increase penalties for dealers who sell fentanyl over social media, rejected.
Of course.
AB 1058 to increase penalties for those possessing a large amount of fentanyl, also rejected.
Oh, we've got a hat trick.
Prosecutors worry what will happen if courts aren't given the tools to convict drug dealers. In the 1980s and 90s, the crack cocaine epidemic led to harsh sentences, mainly against African Americans. But in 2014, California voters passed Proposition 47.
There we go.
Prop 47, the get out of jail free card.
We have nobody to blame but ourselves and George Gascon.
Making simple drug possession for first-time users a misdemeanor rather than a felony. That eliminated jail sentences and made offenders eligible for drug diversion programs.
Yeah, but we don't even do that.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Mark writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, it sure looks like San Francisco's attitude towards crime is no different than the way it was depicted in Dirty Harry.
Is that a movie that Joe Biden ever quotes?
He does, but he quotes the wrong thing.
He's a lion, dog-faced pony soldier.
The mailbag is just bursting at the seams today. And Randy, we're even getting emails not only from celebrities, but dead celebrities.
That's right. Here's an email from Beyond the Grave. It comes to us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. John, I don't see any problem with fentanyl use if it's properly administered by a physician. Sincerely, Michael Jackson.
What do you think Conrad Murray's doing these days? You think he's a physician on a cruise ship somewhere?
Most likely. Let's hear more from this KGO piece on why we've only been able to convict one fentanyl dealer in the last 15 months in San Francisco.
They have adopted an approach that, no, to do that will shove us back into the 1990s. That is their attitude. That attitude, to me, is a sorely mistaken attitude that is costing human lives.
Okay, who's that guy? That guy should be more important.
And he's smart, but that's the most reserved way possible of saying I'm surrounded by complete, utter idiots.
And there's a difference here, right? According to the CDC, more than 150 people die every day from overdoses related to fentanyl in the United States. With crack cocaine in the 80s and 90s, the causes of death among those who either used or sold it were homicides and, remember, AIDS.
Maybe we need crack to make a comeback.
Leanne,
so different.
Yes, and you kind of mentioned this in your story, what wasn't done in Sacramento, but is there anything coming down the pipeline in Sacramento that could help in dealing with the fentanyl crisis?
Well, there were some things that were proposed and passed. For example, I just have them right here. A few examples: expanding treatment for addicts. Also having...
You mean like safe injection sites?
Yes, that is giving more money to Barbara Ferrer. Move on.
Having schools have a plan, an emergency plan in case of overdoses. And also...
Okay, so wait until they overdose and try to help them not die.
Put Narcan.
That's a Cracker Jack idea.
Narcan in the bathroom.
Also, more access to Narcan, for example. And all of those are wonderful, great, you know. But when it comes to dealing with the drug dealers from Sacramento,
those don't
crickets.
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 Well, here's the extra added problem with fentanyl. People using drugs don't even know they're taking fentanyl half the time. They put it into other drugs. So they want to make this about the corporations, and they want to go after the pharmaceutical industry, and they want to turn them into the villain because they're pro-consumer. All right, let's say you're a consumer of drugs and you think you're buying marijuana, or you think you're buying Xanax, or you think you're buying Percocet, or whatever it is that you're addicted to that you want to take and you don't want to get it the legal way. If they're giving you fentanyl in that, something that would otherwise not kill you will now kill you.
Most of these teenagers that have OD'd the schools, they didn't think they were buying fentanyl. But because fentanyl is what the drug dealers use to step on everything because it's cheap and it's powerful, people are dying all the time when that is not their intention, was to take fentanyl. The people that are intending to take fentanyl, their tolerance is so high it doesn't kill them.
That's right. And this is just another example as to why they don't want to judge you based on the action. They want to judge you based on who's doing it. And from their point of view, because the people selling the fentanyl are largely here in the country illegally, they are sympathetic and they can do no wrong. Well, if they're sympathetic and they can do no wrong and they're dealing fentanyl that's killing your population, in San Francisco, the electeds and the juries and the courts will allow them to continue to deal fentanyl and kill off their population. It is beyond my ability to comprehend why you would ever do something like that, but that is exactly what they're doing. And when the big-time elected officials get called out on it, like Gavin Newsom or Rob Bonta or whoever, they always have the same answer. What we're getting is accountability. Well, accountability is letting your people die on the streets. It's 12:59. We've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California hour is next. Don't you go anywhere. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.
I love heroin.